How's it going, everybody? Welcome to another episode of AustinoSportsTalk. Hope you guys had an incredible Valentine's Day, and I hope you guys had some incredible treats along the way. But boy, let me tell you, I have an incredible treat for you guys today. Former Stockton Ports play-by-play broadcaster and current University of Pacific men's basketball and Reno Aces play-by-play broadcaster, Zack Bayrouty. I've been wanting to have you on for a while. Welcome to the show, and tell us how you're doing, man.
Thanks, Austin. I'm doing well. It's been an odd season, but we're getting through basketball season. My wife and I just had our first child, a daughter, back in December, so that's kind of been on the radar first and foremost the last couple of months. But everything is great, and I'm just hoping now we can get some baseball in here in a couple of months.
Yeah, I know keeping busy is definitely not a problem that you've had recently, even with COVID going on. So that's good for you. Yeah, for everyone who's listening, I actually, back in 8th grade, this is how I kind of met and kind of was introduced to Zach. It was, I had a career class, and the teacher basically knew that I was into sports and came up to me and was like, hey, there's going to be a play-by-play broadcaster coming in a few weeks. And I was like, really? What? Tell me when, where, why, how.
Charlie Honor, give a shout out to Mr. Honor.
Yeah. I honestly blanked on his name. I was trying to think of it for the last half hour, but thank you for that. Yeah, so I basically was really excited. He let me know when you were coming in. And then after you came in, I actually went to a Stockton Ports game, which is the single A affiliate for the Oakland A's. And he basically let me come into the booth. I watched him announce, and I think I was probably, I don't even know, 11 or 12 at the time. And it was just really awesome. And it kind of made me even want to break into the sports industry more. So thank you for that. And that's kind of how I met Zach, just so all of you guys know.
Which was really cool, by the way. I really enjoyed when you came out after the class. Like it's always neat to, if you're a speaker somewhere, to kind of connect the dots with the people you're talking with. So it was cool to have you out at the ballpark that day. I remember it.
That's awesome. All right, cool. So I just kind of want to dive in. Let's start kind of at a very young age. I know you grew up on the East Coast. Obviously, it's pretty easy to become a sports fanatic growing up on the East. So kind of growing up as a kid, tell me about what sports you played and how that kind of led to you wanting to not necessarily pursue playing a sport, but maybe just pursue breaking into the sports industry specifically. How did that all kind of line up for you?
So, I mean, I played basketball and baseball primarily growing up. I never really, my dad kind of messed up his body playing football. So from a young age, I knew that probably wasn't for me. And I don't think my dad ever wanted us to play football because it didn't end well for him. So, our friends in the neighborhood, we would play football in the backyard. Don't get me wrong. Like I love football, but I just never really put on helmet and pads because I was always afraid to wind up like my dad with 5 knee surgeries and all that. So, played mostly basketball and baseball and followed the Red Sox and the Celtics. And I just loved it. Like I couldn't get enough of it at school. It's all I thought of. Of course, you go home at night and you watch a Red Sox game, or you go to bed if the Red Sox are on the West Coast, and the only way you can get around your bedtime is you listen on your little radio. I don't know if kids do that anymore. They probably do it on their phones, but I'd tune into the radio, and if the Red Sox are playing the Angels in Anaheim, like it's a 10 o'clock start on the East Coast. So I would just kind of huddle up and listen that way. And I kind of fell in love with it from the media side that way. I also read a lot of newspapers. That was a big thing. Like we always had the newspaper in our house, and I would always read the sports section. And because I followed my teams, I could like follow the storylines through the sports writers with the Boston Globe and the Boston Herald. So I actually really tried to get into that side of it at first in college. And I wanted to be a sports writer. And then I kind of found my way into broadcasting just by happenstance. Like I did an internship in West Palm Beach, Florida, met someone who was a broadcaster, went on the radio with him one time. He invited me to come on and do a game with him. We developed a good rapport. He ended up becoming the next Stockton Ports play-by-play guy, and then invited me to come out and basically gave me a job right out of college to be his assistant and handle a lot of the media stuff. And he left after a year. I fell into his chair. The Ports asked me if I wanted to do it. I said, sure. And it's kind of how my career was born. It's not traditional. Let's say that.
Yeah, that kind of leads me to my next question. So you kind of talked about how you wanted to be a sports writer, but obviously I've seen you broadcast, and you definitely have that energy that the game needs in a play-by-play broadcaster, and you just kind of have that voice. So was that something you didn't discover until you were kind of pushed into the broadcasting industry, like even before you said, oh, I want to be a sports writer? Did you know kind of growing up that you had that sort of voice, or is that something you kind of discovered later in breaking into the industry?
Well, thank you first of all, and that's actually a good question. I didn't. I think I'm still finding my voice, to be honest, and I think anybody that's in play by play will probably tell you that. I mean, you can even go probably to some guys that are working in Major League Baseball, and if they listen to their stuff maybe from 5 or 10 years ago, they'll tell you that they've evolved and are completely different now. So it's just kind of ever evolving. Because I listened to it and consumed so much of it as a kid, I kind of knew what it's supposed to sound like, and I kind of knew what I liked. And because of my journalism background, I knew how to tell a story, what elements are important if you're an audience. Journalism school really refined me. I went to Northeastern in Boston, so I kind of mixed those two. My kid years growing up listening and consuming all these broadcasts, and then my college years with figuring out the nuances of telling stories and reporting, and being the conduit for people. I think that those two kind of mixed together, and then you're forged in the fire of experience. Like I just basically was thrown in and had to figure it out as I went. So, like I said, I still figure it out, I think, game by game. And every game, I think what I love most, among other things about my job, is that every game presents a different challenge, and you can tell a different story. And I kind of embrace that. And, some games will be better than others. I think a lot of what I do is predicated on how the game is. Like if it's a bad game, you might have a broadcast that isn't tremendous. I mean, you're still going to do a good job, but it's just not going to be like, man, I nailed it. But if you have a good game and a good broadcast, like there's no better feeling than that.
Yeah, I think that's something, just me and other people that want to break into the sports industry kind of have to realize. And that's something that you just brought up is a really good point. And it's like, even though pursuing sports, whatever you want to pursue, if you are going out and pursuing your dream, it's not necessarily going to be easy. It's going to be hard work. It's going to be a grind, but it's just a matter of enjoying that grind and enjoying that hard work. And so you bring up a really good point there, just about, you're going to have those tough games, and you're going to get thrown around into different industries and not really know what you're doing. And then you just kind of build your own journey and find your way to where you are. So it's awesome.
Never lose the passion. It's all about enjoying, like you said, the journey. I can't tell you how many times, I go back now. Gosh, I've been doing this such a long time. I mean, I can go back a decade and be like, man, I just want to get where I'm going already. And now, 10 years removed from those moments, I'm like, I really cherish the journey, and even those tougher moments, they make you better.
Yeah, definitely. That's something I think about all the time right now. I'm just stuck in community college. I'm stuck in my house. I'm stuck online, and I'm actually transferring to Arizona State in fall 21, and that's just something.
Cronkite school? You're going to go journalism?
Yeah, I am
Right.
going to the Cronkite
Congrats.
school.
Good spot.
Yeah. Thank you. So yeah, for me, like right now, I'm just telling myself I want to go there. Can I just fast forward my life to that moment and fast forward to the moment where I can do this A, B, and C? But exactly, and you bring up that point where it starts right now. With this podcast or just whatever I do and whatever anyone else is doing through high school and college. It starts in the present. It doesn't start in the future. So. That's awesome. So I just kind of want to talk about throughout high school and college, you kind of knew you wanted to break into the sports industry. I don't know, maybe you did stuff in elementary school, even as early as that, but what were some of the side hobbies that you kind of did to pursue your passion? Did you like record games and just announce them, for fun? Was there anything that you just kind of did as a side hobby kind of growing up into high school?
No, I literally was a fan, and I consumed everything as a fan. And even up until my sophomore year in college, like at Northeastern, they do what's called a co-op program, meaning that you go they were trimesters then, I think they're semesters now, but you go and you get an internship for either a semester or two, depending on what it is now. And you're not in school at that time. So you basically go out into the workforce, which is how I got an internship in West Palm Beach, Florida. Like I was still in school, but it was part of the co-op program at Northeastern, which was huge. But because of that, your sophomore year at Northeastern, you basically have to declare what you want to study. Like my first year, I took all kinds of different courses. And my second year, I had to make a decision, and I still didn't know what I wanted to do. And I just kind of put the pieces together. I was like, well, I love to write. I love reading the news. I love the news and I love sports. So I can basically go to journalism school and maybe I can write and be a sports writer. Because I loved consuming that stuff growing up. And it was really a passion of mine from being a kid. Like I on my way into high school, like I'd stop and get the newspaper. It was like older people kind of stuff that I used to do. Like I was just an old soul about it. So, I declared that my sophomore year in college. And it really wasn't until then that I started developing hobbies. I guess you wouldn't call them hobbies. Then you develop skills that lead you in the right direction. So through the classes I took, like I would have to record news updates and go report on games that were happening, like Northeastern University basketball games. Like I'd be like a student reporter going and filing a story with my professor about that. And that's where I learned basic skills. So I guess growing up, like my only hobby was consuming sports and doing it through broadcasts and through the newspaper.
Yeah, no, that's really good to hear. Just because I know for me especially, I'm on the exact same boat as you up until this podcast, and I'm on the student newspaper with the community college I go to. But just being a sports fan and just consuming as much as you can is honestly, I think, enough growing up as a kid to break into the sports industry. Once you get into college and you start taking those classes and those skills and you start building that resume, obviously that's kind of where you launch pad. But just growing up, just being a sports fan can be enough if that passion kind of drives you to the point where you pick the college and you pick the degree you want to pursue and kind of continue that journey. So that's kind of where I am, so it's good to hear.
I think first and foremost, if you want to try and get into this industry, like you have to have a passion for it. And maybe that passion fades and maybe at some point you want to do something else. But I can tell you that to be able to stick with it and to travel that road, you need a lot of things, but you also need to have a passion for what you're doing. And I've been fortunate. I've never lost that passion. And, it's even grown because now it's grown and become a skill for me through which I am able to kind of convey my passion for the stories I tell.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's something that sports fans, avid sports fans as us, can kind of be appreciated for. Is it's kind of hard to lose that passion. If you're growing up and you just love sports from the jump, if you want to pursue sports, then I think it's kind of easy to not lose that focus. Just especially for me, I just don't see myself losing interest in sports just because I've been groomed to love it for so long. And I think it's might be easier to not lose that passion for sports kind of going throughout your life. So
you know what though, like it's a little bit different though nowadays because sports now, and I was thinking about this the other day, and this might be off topic for you, but I'll say it anyways. Like sports now is just different than sports when I was growing up. Like when I was growing up, you had your access was basically the broadcasts, radio or TV and the newspaper. Whereas now you have direct access basically to the athletes. And everything is just, the landscape is so different. So the way that I was molded as a broadcaster and maybe even as a reporter, if you will, it's going to be totally different than the way someone like you is molded and the people that follow you, how they're molded, because you're growing up in a different environment as far as how everything is presented and how you can access the teams that you love and the athletes that you really enjoy watching. So the style is going to be different and evolving, and that's kind of another cool thing about this field too, is that, I know I'm unique in what I do. I know people that are my colleagues at the same level, they're completely unique in what they do because we're all molded differently. So you're going to be molded much differently than someone like me or people my age, which is really cool.
Yeah, I think I think that's the most important part is everyone kind of gets, we all have this passion for sports, but we obviously all kind of have our own unique journey that, again, molds you into who you are and molds me into who I am and everyone who comes before and, after me. I think that's really good stuff. So I just kind of want to jump to your transition from the East Coast to the West Coast straight out of college. I think, if anything, I was actually thinking about this, writing this question down before I hopped on with you. And if it were me, I think I would rather make an insane jump across the country than to stay where I am, because breaking into the sports industry, I feel like is in itself already a very quote unquote risky and kind of a dream. So I think, straight out of college, you basically you start off on the East Coast, you move all the way across the country. I just think that's an incredible journey for you. And I don't know, I'm going to let you talk about that, but I was just thinking about that. And I think as someone breaking into the sports industry, that must have been really cool for you to make an insane jump like that.
Well, I'll say this. I was really lucky because if a lot of times, if you want to make it in this field, you have to be willing to go anywhere. Like you have to go where you're going to get the job. So, you might make one move, you might make 10 moves in this field. And for me, I've been so lucky. I mean, my one move was huge and it was scary, but since then I haven't had to go anywhere else. Like everything here now, when I'm going to do the Reno Aces. I was supposed to do it last year. Obviously COVID got in the way, but it's going to be my first year. It's going to be a unique situation. I mean, it's only 3 hours from my house in Lodi, but we're going to have to work it out and I'll basically kind of be remote for a summer. But other than that, like I've been very, very lucky to be in one place. But I will tell you that I've never been as scared in my life as when I was driving cross country to make the move. And I was cool until it's funny enough, I got to Reno and I got so scared at that point because I made the drive with my cousin and it was like, oh man, we're 3 hours away and like, this is really happening and I'm moving. And I just remember it all hit me then. But in that moment, I feel like I grew so much. I basically saw this fear and I took it head on. And I was uncomfortable for a little while, which I think is good for anybody because that's really when you grow, as a person and as a professional. And I would advise anyone, especially coming right out of college, to go where the wind takes you and to go where the job takes you. And even if you're afraid and even if it's going to be a bit of a hardship, meet it head on and do your best and figure it out as you go because that makes you'll have just a certain soul about you that maybe other people wouldn't, that choose to play it safe.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I kind of want to touch on because I have a lot of listeners that are from the West Coast and I have some listeners that are actually from the East Coast, and you've kind of been able to live. I mean, you basically lived one half of your life on the East and now you've lived half of your life on the West Coast. So talk about like we touched on this in the episode we had with you earlier, but just the culture change from being a sports fan on the East Coast from being a sports fan on the West Coast, because obviously both coasts are huge with sports and obviously they're extremely different. So talk about kind of that difference you experienced from the East Coast going to the West Coast.
It's funny. I would say I was a sports fan on the East Coast. I was a sports professional on the West Coast. So the East Coast kind of gave me my intensity growing up as a sports fan on the East Coast. Like it's intense. Like they don't play on talk radio in Boston. Like it's hardcore. They're intelligent fans. Like you're always thinking just intensely about, back when I was growing up, it was the Red Sox because the Red Sox at that point hadn't won. They sucked for a while and it's like, are we ever going to see them win? And, I was lucky to see them win that World Series the fall before I got into working in sports. So I was like a pure fan at that point. But the West Coast is just a different experience. And I've really come to enjoy the way sports is consumed here. I didn't like it at first, really. The first couple of years I was out here, I was like, man, it's just not like there's not that intensity. I think I'll always have that intensity about me as far as sports go, but it's consumed a little bit differently out here. And I think in part because you have so many options, like there's so many local teams, you have 2 NFL teams, you have an NBA team that's jumped across the bay, you have 2 Major League Baseball teams. I think the Sharks are maybe that one team that like the entire Bay Area gets behind no matter what. But it's just different. Like I'm very lucky in that I got the intensity of being an East Coast sports fan. And then I kind of had it mellow a little bit here on the West Coast. And I think combining those 2 elements and experiences together for me kind of has brought me to where I am now and how I really, it impacts how I call games. Just that's the best way I can say it. Like my East Coast intensity and my West Coast, like mellow, they come together, I think. And I think really affect and impact my broadcast, hopefully in a good way.
Yeah, definitely. And so I definitely want to jump into, some your experience with the Stockton Ports. Obviously, you were there from 2006 to 2019. And I know that, being affiliated with the A's, there were some incredible names that you were kind of able to see play before they blossomed and became studs in the majors. So talk about your experience with the Ports and some of those big names that you kind of saw play that you either maybe predicted they were going to break out in the league or maybe some shockers. Just talk about that experience and some of the players that you were able to work with.
Well, the experience was phenomenal. I couldn't have asked to be in a better spot and landed in a better spot out of college. Like to spend 14 years doing games at that level, it's unusual, without moving anywhere. But the Ports treated me so well when I was there for 14 years, and I was fortunate because of that to have so many experiences and to meet so many of these guys. Um, I mean, gosh, you go back to Sean Doolittle when he was a first baseman on the 2008 team before he blew out his knee and had to become a pitcher. And now, obviously, he's the Sean that everybody knows, who's I think now just been signed by the Reds. That was the only Stockton Ports championship team, by the way, was 2008. That in my tenure. Gosh, I mean, it seems because we've had a year off, it seems like so long ago. I'm trying to think of the most recent ones. I mean, a guy like Matt Chapman, that team was pretty incredible. Ryan Healy, Daniel Robertson, Chad Pinder. I mean, the list goes on. Pitchers, Jesus Luzardo, one of the more recent guys, AJ Puck, among others, and then all the guys that came through as major league rehab assignments. Like one time, Mike Piazza. Like, do you remember what? Do you ever watch Mike Piazza? Had you ever watched him as a kid? Do you remember? Or was he retired?
So it was interesting. I actually didn't
You're
really
gonna
become
make
a
me
baseball
feel
fan.
really old right now.
I am. I didn't really become a baseball fan until like 2009, 2010. So I really didn't see much of him, but obviously I know he's one of the best catchers of all time. I saw a bunch of his highlights, but that's crazy. I never knew that he went
He
through there.
rehabbed in '07 with us, and he hit 2 home runs in a game, and I got to call it. It was really cool, really cool to see a future Hall of Famer. So I mean, all those experiences, and even the guys that you don't know about. There were guys that I'll go to my grave knowing that in a different setting they could have been good major league ball players. And they never really got the chance. Some people get more of a chance than others, and that's something you learn in baseball. Like certain guys have big signing bonuses; they're going to get all the opportunities to fail. Whereas guys that are really talented and know how to grind, they might not get as many opportunities. So there are players that nobody will ever know about that I really got to know and become close with. And those are really some of the more special bonds that I have with some of the players that came through Stockton.
Yeah, and was Josh Donaldson on that '08 team? I know he went through
Donaldson
there.
was, yep. I was going to mention him. He got traded middle of that season from the Cubs to the A's, and I was actually the first guy he met when he arrived, because we were in Bakersfield, and he basically walked into the lobby of the Days Inn in Bakersfield, and he had a big Cubs bag, and I was the only guy there, and so I was the first guy that he met, which is kind of a crazy story, and it's always a fun memory that brings a smile to my face. Like it seems like ancient history now, but anytime I see Josh, I think of that moment and how far we both come.
Yeah, what an incredible story that is. I don't even think you touched on that. You might have, but that's incredible. So I just kind of want to talk about, you had so many years at the Stockton Ports, and I know I'm not really going to ask you what your favorite game was because I think that might be a bit of a stretch to answer, but talk about a game or two that just kind of stick in your head in terms of, obviously whether it was back in 2009 or maybe is, 2018, just talk about a game or two that kind of stick in your head that you kind of think of, on a daily basis or just kind of pop up in your head randomly.
So there are two ways I'm going to go here. So the first one was the 2008 Cal League North Division Championship Series. It was the Ports and the San Jose Giants. It was a best-of-5 series, and the winner of the series goes to the championship series, which the Ports obviously won. But the Ports, the series went 5 games, so it went the distance. And it was probably the most fun I've ever had especially in a series. Like I've broadcast a bunch of series now. Like that was the best, most fun series to call. The Ports had back-to-back walk-off wins at home with facing elimination. The players in that series were incredible. Buster Posey had just come up for the San Jose Giants. He had just been drafted, so he came up, and that was his first action in the Cal League. He got run over at home plate in Game 3 of that series, which was why. I mean, that, it doesn't happen anymore. Like, this is ancient history. Like, this is making me sound like a dinosaur, but like, that stuff happened in the minor leagues. Like, a guy like that was whatever he was, the 3rd overall pick, he got trucked at home plate by one of the dudes that was just a scrapper on our team. And, he wasn't going to back down. And I don't think Buster played again after that collision. I think they took him out and they were like, yeah, we're not letting this guy see the field anymore.
Yeah, it happened to him in the majors too. That wasn't the first time he got ran over.
Oh yeah. It was a nice precursor, prelude to things to come. But I mean, Josh Donaldson was in that series. For the Giants, it was Pablo Sandoval, I think, played in that series. Like, it was just chock full of good names, and even guys that didn't make it were guys that were really, really good at that level, like good impact players. And genuinely, the teams, I think, kind of had a disdain for each other. So that was a fun series, and it went 5 games, and the Ports ended up blowing out the Giants in Game 5 in San Jose against a pitcher that had owned them. And it was just exhilarating and a lot of fun. And then the other game that really stands out in my mind, it was in 2013. I want to say it was like August 9th, 2013. A guy by the name of Tanner Peters came 2 outs away from a perfect game. And that was, to that point, I'd never called a no-hitter. So, here's this pitcher who was a changeup artist. Like, he didn't throw hard, but he's having this incredible run. And the story, before I get into the end of that story, was that our official scorer called me, longtime official scorer, Paul Meiskens, called me like an hour before the game started. He says, "Hey, I'm throwing up. Like, I can't make it in today to score the game." And like, try and find an official scorer within an hour of a game starting. Like, it's tough. So I had to be the official scorer, meaning that I'm the guy that's determining what's a hit, what's an error. And when you're on the hook for a no-hitter or a perfect game, it really, I mean, it gives you the sweats. And I'm trying to broadcast the game, which is an incredible game. And I'm also like on pins and needles, because I'm like, if someone kicks a ground ball, I'm going to have to decide if it's a hit or an error, and it's going to affect everything. So Tanner lost the perfect game with 2 outs to go in the 9th. And it was really a bummer. I to this day, I wish that it would have ended differently. I left a changeup up high. And it got hit off the wall for a double. It was a clean double, and that's all I could ask for. But I'll never forget calling that game.
That is insane. I mean, for you not only to fill those shoes, not even an hour before the game, but just to realize the meaning behind the game specifically. That must have been...
The best part about that is that so the official scorer has to get the scoring decisions into Major League Baseball. Like, MLB controls all the box scores, and you basically report every half inning to Major League Baseball. Well, I can't get on the phone because I'm doing a game. So I was reporting it through AOL Instant Messenger, which I used to have it. I don't even have it anymore. Like, I don't know if anyone has it anymore. I think they got rid of it. But AIM, like, I dug up my old account. They were like, "Do you have an AOL Instant Messenger account to do this? Like, that's going to be the best way." And I was like, "Yeah, I think I do." And so I'm like, basically instant messaging every play back to New York. Like, it was crazy.
That must make you a great multitasker from that moment on. That must have been one of the tougher, multitasking things you've ever had to do. But that's an incredible story.
Pretty cool.
So I kind of want to jump to the year 2019. Pretty big year for you in terms of you basically, you ended your run with the Ports. You obviously got promoted to the AAA level with the Reno Aces. You called an Oakland Athletics game. So I just kind of want you to dive into that, and let's talk about that Oakland A's game that you called. How did that kind of come about? And I know you touched on this before, so I kind of know a little bit, but just for the listeners, I think this is just an incredible story for you and for anybody out there. How was that experience, and how did you get that opportunity?
The experience was amazing, and I'll get into that on the back end. But I will forever be grateful to the A's and to Vince Cotroneo and Ken Korak, who are their 2 primary radio broadcasters, and Matt Pearl, who's the director of broadcasting. But obviously, I'd been in the A's system for a while, and I developed just relationships because I'd been there for a while with Vince and with Ken and with Matt too. To the point where they felt comfortable asking me to fill in a game where Ken was going to be off. And this, again, this only comes over time and relationships. Like it wasn't anything I really did. I was just kind of there. And they were so kind to think to ask me, and they knew it would be a big deal for me. So, I woke up in Visalia one day in July of 2019 to a phone call, and it was Matt from the A's, who's their director of broadcasting. And he, basically asked, he said, Ken on September 3rd is going to be out. We'd love it for you to fill in and make your major league debut with us. And would you be okay with that? It's like, I didn't even like have the words, and I was like, well, yeah, of course, And so, Vince Cotroneo and Ken Korak were really behind it, behind the scenes and behind it all. Like they pushed for me because they were both guys that came up through the minor leagues and they know what a big deal it is. So, I'm forever grateful to those guys. So they called and asked me, and it was like the longest 2 months of my life waiting for, it was like 2 months to the day where they called me. So, September 3rd rolls around, and it was, I'll never forget it. Like I was certainly nervous that morning, but I got a call from Ken Korak, who's the number one play-by-play guy on radio. And he just wanted to talk to me and wish me luck. And it was a special phone call. And I drove in, and butterflies, as you pull up to the Coliseum, like you're pulling up to a major league ballpark to do this, to do something that you've been waiting your whole life to do and you prepared your whole life to do. And they could not have been nicer. Like Vince Cotroneo could not have been nicer to me that day. He brought me with him to interview Bob Melvin, on the field, brought me with him to talk to everybody, just making me feel like I belong. And then on the radio, he was fantastic to me. Just made me feel at ease. And I'll never forget that as long as I live. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, that phone call in July, you basically you're kind of like a minor league baseball player. You got called up to the big leagues, basically. So that phone call in itself is probably something you'll also never forget.
There's not to think about the number of people that have called Major League Baseball games. Like it's not a big group, So it's you're just honored by it.
Definitely. So this whole let's dive into your Reno Aces stuff. It's been a pretty interesting journey for you, I bet, just because, as soon as that kind of happened, COVID-19 happened. And so talk about how you've kind of been able to stay involved with the Reno Aces during this time and how you've been able to sort of keep your baseball calling skills in shape. Have you been like calling random games? Have you just kind of taken a break from calling baseball games? Like how has this whole year and a half or two kind of worked out for you?
So first of all, to answer the Reno question, they have been phenomenal to me. Like they owe me nothing. I'm their newest employee, but they basically kept me on a part-time basis during the COVID year to do a weekly podcast, Aces Loaded, which was a lot of fun. And not only was it a lot of fun, not only did it allow me to make content for the Aces, but it kind of allowed me to get to know people within Diamondbacks organization. Like I talked with, a bunch of guys that not only were Reno guys, but major league guys. So for them to allow me to do that and give me the platform to do that and to keep me on like as an employee when they didn't have to was just amazing. And they, reached out to me the other day, basically reassuring me, hey, like as soon as our season starts, you're our guy. Like, don't worry, we're going to get you in here. So I could not be more grateful. Like, again, this is luck. Like I have wound up at the best places, and Reno is certainly on that list. As far as calling baseball, I'll be honest, like I haven't. I'm going to be calling some baseball games for Pacific here in the next couple of weeks. And those will be my first games since the A's game, since September of 2019. I think, it's something you don't lose. It's a skill you don't lose. But I'll be honest, like I've thought long and hard about getting baseball reps and what it's going to feel like, and just kind of getting the day-to-day of baseball again. It's after a year off, I'm sure it'll come right back. It'll be like riding a bike, but I've certainly thought about it. And I would say that maybe my basketball broadcasts this year have suffered a little bit because I said this the other day, like baseball broadcasting works out all your broadcast muscles. Like if you can broadcast baseball, you can broadcast anything. So I'm anxious to get back into a baseball broadcast booth and to to make sure I still have it.
Yeah, definitely. So obviously, I kind of brought you on for the baseball talk, but I know you, like I said, you are just an insanely busy guy, and I know you've been calling the UOP men's basketball games. Talk about how that experience has been, just especially in the midst of COVID. How how honored are you to kind of be able to do something involving play-by-play announcing during a time where it's probably very hard to actually do something like that, and you're probably, I'm guessing, very thankful that you're able to kind of at least do something with everything going on right now.
I'm grateful would be the word. Like I'm very
Grateful, yeah.
grateful I get to do it. I'm grateful that Pacific has, I mean, I'm a tier 1. They made me a tier 1 employee. So I get COVID tested 3 times a week so that I'm able to not only travel, but like sit on the floor with the team and be able to go wherever the team goes. Like there are some guys that are broadcasting games for their teams that are like tier 2 or tier 3, meaning they have to keep their distance and they can't really do in-person interviews. Well, Pacific basically broke down those walls for me and said, hey, you're going to be tier 1 and you can do whatever the team does, go wherever they go and travel with them. So it was really cool of them to do that. It's been an interesting year, to say the least, as far as trying to plan your life. You know, the schedule came out. It was a super regional schedule, so it's not like there were crazy trips planned. But, you know, we had a pause. Let's see. We had a pause. I'm blanking on the day, but we had a 24-day pause after December 20th because the COVID ran through the team. So that was an extended pause. And it's like, are we going to get this thing off the ground? Like we had to miss a bunch of games. But, you know, once we got into the WCC part of the season in January, it's been pretty steady. We've had to miss a few games because other teams have had COVID. You know, but like we're going to make up a game in San Diego next Tuesday. It's just, you have to kind of be on your toes. You know, they told us we were going to BYU like the day before we were going. They're like, yeah, you guys are getting on a plane tomorrow and going to Provo, Utah. It's like, well, okay, you know, like let's pack up and go. So it's been a season where you can't really plan. You got to be on your toes. But again, I think you just kind of find the adventure in it all, and you'd be grateful that you're actually doing games. And I'll do whatever I have to do games this year, whatever I have to do.
Definitely. How has traveling been in terms of, obviously, you know, it's stayed kind of locally. You're not, you know, traveling, you know, across the country and stuff like that. But how is just traveling, you know, San Diego or wherever you're going, maybe down south or up north, like with everything going on with the restrictions, what do you do when you're not calling a game and you're traveling? Are you stuck in a hotel room? What are you able to do?
Yeah, you're basically in a hotel room. I'll take a few walks around the block. Like I might go somewhere and, you know, if there's a good takeout place, like order some takeout. But like we're going to Portland this weekend, and Portland's usually one of those cities where for a night I kind of like to go and I have my spots that I like to go and see. You know, it's cool to be in another city and to experience the vibe, but not this year. Like everything is just kind of confined, and you can't even go in the hotel gym and get a workout in because that's off limits, which is, I think, the hardest thing for a lot of people on our team, especially our strength coach, because he'll take the guys in there and get them worked out every day. And you can't do that. You know, he's been able to do a couple of things out like the pool area, but, you know, some places frown on that. So it's hit or miss there. But yeah, you just be as vigilant as you can. You know, you take as many walks around the block as you can, and then you're in the room and you're calling a game and you're back in the room and you're in the airport. Like it's pretty regimented.
Yeah, definitely. And I just kind of wanted to ask you one more question before I kind of wanted to just dive into some advice you'd give for people breaking into the industry and maybe talk about your life a little bit. I know you just recently had a kid and how that's been, but about broadcasting, just one last question. With this whole experience going on and with you kind of still being able to pursue your craft in terms of doing play-by-play for basketball, but not baseball, has this kind of made you more excited than ever just to get back in that broadcast booth for like a Reno Aces game? Just taking such a long break, it's almost like you're able to rejuvenate your career in a way. And does it almost feel like a fresh start because you've been just like hoping to get back in that booth for such a long time now?
Yeah, I think my friends and I, the summer of 2020, we called it like a sabbatical. Like that's what it felt like. It was just some time away, knowing hopefully you'd be back. I mean, some of my friends aren't as lucky because, you know, there have been a couple of franchises in minor league baseball eliminated by Major League Baseball, which is a whole other, you know, can of worms. I don't know if we want to open here. It's just, you know, it's changing the landscape of everything. But yeah, to answer your question, I'm I couldn't be more excited to to get back in calling baseball. Like, it's what I do. Like, it's your identity. It's a big part of your identity, and when it's taken away from you, you kind of you struggle. Like, it's one of the loves of my life, and I was without it, and especially without it at a AAA level that I've strived to kind of get to my whole career. To have it taken away at that point was tough, but again, I'm lucky knowing that I'm going to get to be back there and to get to be at that level, whereas a lot of other people, for a lot of other reasons, haven't been as lucky through this whole period, not just baseball wise, but COVID wise, with friends and family getting sick and unfortunately passing away. So yeah, I am dying to get back in the booth. Can't come soon enough.
Yeah, I think that's something I try to do too, in terms of, obviously, especially in California, the restrictions are a lot, more strict. And I think it's almost like we're able to sort of be excited for the future, because once everything's able to get back up and open, and once we're able to kind of get that sense of normalcy, it's just going to feel so good, just being able to go back to our day-to-day lives that we had almost a year and a half ago from now, and to just kind of like get that excitement back and to just be thankful for what we had. And I think whenever that time comes, it's going to be incredible.
What I do worry about, though, and this is another thing where it's like it's going to depend on the landscape moving forward, is I worry that it's not going to be the same as it once was in terms of being able to interact and in terms of being able to be around people that you need to talk to get like intimate stuff, like, I mean, I'd go to batting practice every day and you watch BP and you interact with the guys. I hope we'll be able to still do that. I think you go to different cities and you're able to, maybe take a walk with someone like one of the players or coaches and go have lunch and get to know them a little bit better. I hope we're able to do that. Like, I hope it's not just, hey, we're here and we're going into our hotel room and, we're not gonna talk face to face, because we can't. And I think that would change things quite a bit. But I'm hoping, like once we're able to do that again, it'll make me feel a lot normal.
Yeah, definitely. And that's something I think we all have to hope for, is we really hope that, yeah, we can get back to that normalcy, but to be able to kind of ease it in, that way we can get the full benefit of what we had. Because, a lot of the times, not to get political or anything, but, sometimes, stuff is kind of, everything opens back up all of a sudden, and then all of a sudden gets shut back down. And, like you said, especially within the sports industry, I think it's important that we, maybe do 10% capacity, 20% capacity, and just kind of ease it throughout the next few years, even, just so, maybe even whether it's 5 years from now, 10 years from now, we're able to get that experience that we once had to full effect. Awesome. So I just kind of want to get into, obviously you just had a kid. Let's talk about that a little bit, and just kind of about Zack Bayrouty's day-to-day life, whether you're traveling or, at your beautiful home in Lodi. Let's just kind of dive into what your personal life has been like over the past few months.
Yeah. So my wife, Megan, and I, we had our daughter, Nora Adele, December 20th. And, she's perfect in every way, and fatherhood changes you a little bit. I think before it's crazy to think about life before the pandemic, and Megan and I were just talking about it, going back to March of 2019, like I was looking at some emails, from March of 2020. I'm like, man, like this is before like our daughter was even conceived, before there was a pandemic. Like, it was just a completely different place. But I guess, like fatherhood changes you and a pandemic changes you a little bit. And to have those two things happen at once has been really interesting. It's also been kind of, in a way, for me, a blessing, because I've been home when normally I might be gone a little bit more. So I've been able to be around my daughter and, experience the day-to-days of fatherhood and baby infancy, and it's a beautiful thing, and it's a magical journey, and then we're just at the start. So that's pretty much consumed my day-to-day life outside of things at Pacific. I don't know. This week, I guess we're going to maybe get a preliminary baseball schedule. We'll see what that entails, and kind of plan life for when hopefully I'll be in Reno, and, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. And our, Megan and our daughter will come up and kind of be around as much as they can. But, for now, I'm just really focused on my daughter and whatever Pacific needs me to do, which is cool, because everything's right here and local.
That's great. That's great stuff. And it's funny. I'm literally in Lodi too. We're probably within 5 minutes of each other. And I think it's a great city just to relax a little bit on off days, and especially to raise a family. So it sounds like you
Good
got
spot.
yourself got yourself set up pretty well. So just real quickly before we dive into some baseball talk, I just kind of want to pick your brain a little bit for some advice for myself and just for all the listeners. Whether it's podcasters or athletes or really just anybody. So I know you've been on podcasts and you even hosted some podcasts. You've done play-by-play broadcasting and you've done sports writing. You've done all of this stuff and you've really been able to kind of break into every aspect, not every aspect, but a lot of different angles of the sports industry. So from kind of starting at zero in terms of growing up just being a sports fan to kind of getting to that point where your job is to love sports 24/7, what kind of advice would you give from getting from where you're just a sports fan as a kid to, like I said, being able to just love sports 24/7 and getting paid for it?
Well, first you have to have the passion, which could evolve. And I would say don't be afraid to evolve with the passion. Like for me, my passion was being a fan up until I was, say 22 to 25. Like it was intense passion. And now my passion is kind of consuming in a different way and telling stories about it and conveying the feel of what's going on at a ballpark or an arena. Like to me, that's the most special thing is you can envision someone, if you're doing a radio broadcast, you can envision someone in their car or on a run or sitting somewhere being like, hey, I'll flip this game on. And like, you're literally conveying to them what's happening at this place. And to me, there's no more powerful medium than doing that over the radio. And especially for baseball play-by-play, where there's so many intricacies and there's so much to look at and there's so much to tell people about. So have the passion for it. And also, have the passion for storytelling and for gathering information and for being, I guess just an available person to people along the way. It's amazing how when you say you get your first job out of college, you develop relationships with certain people and those relationships get you, other relationships. And then those relationships get you kind of the next step ahead. You just have to be open to whatever life throws at you and whatever relationships come your way. I know that kind of sounds a little bit convoluted, but that's really what it is. Like you have the passion, you have the skills to be able to kind of do that and execute that. And then you have the relationships that bind it all together and ultimately, I think, get you where you're going down the road.
That's incredible. Yeah, it's definitely convoluted. So don't feel ashamed for using that word. I definitely think it is. And again, I think it is just comes down to making.
There's no right. What I'm trying to say is there's no right path. Like everyone's like, oh, how do you do this? Like there's no arithmetic involved. Like it's you literally have to have a feel for it, and you have to be open to whatever comes your way.
Definitely, yeah. And I think it's just all about making those connections. It's all about networking because without doing that, you're not. I feel like that is probably the only concrete thing you have to do to break into the sports industry. And that's kind of something everyone has to do is you do have to network and make those connections and meet the people that kind of get you to that next step. And so, hearing that from you is awesome. And
but you also, like Austin, you have to do it the right way.
Yep.
Because there are people that are so desperate to do this and get into this and they go about it the wrong way. Like they think it's like almost like a sport. I can't stress the importance of doing it the right way, being on your journey and just, I think appreciating every step, but also like, instead of looking at someone as a key to your next step, like you look at someone as an acquaintance and as a coworker and as a colleague, and you're honest with them, and that's how you kind of move forward and develop relationships. You don't think to yourself like, oh, this is going to get me here. Like, no, that's not the way it works in the long run. It may work in the short term, but in the long run, like that never works.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for that. Thank you for kind of jumping in and fixing kind of what I said. Again, obviously, I'm very
Oh, you're fine. I wasn't fixing what you're saying. I'm reiterating like.
No, thank you. I really appreciate that. And that's awesome for our audience to just kind of hear. Before we get into the baseball talk again, I just want to thank you for hopping on and not
My
only
pleasure.
sharing your story about how you fell in love with sports and how you broke into not just the sports industry, but specifically play-by-play broadcasting, but for also sharing a little bit about your personal life and for just giving some insight on, young aspiring people, sports journalists, aspiring sports broadcasters, sports analysts, just whatever they want to do. Just, I think your advice just kind of relates with anybody who wants to break into the sports industry. And I like how you kept it broad. And again, I really appreciate you for talking about all that.
Oh, my pleasure.
Cool. All right. Let's get into some baseball talk. First, I kind of want to touch on some of the rule changes that we've seen over the last couple of years. And we've touched on this. And I'd love to pick your brain about this just because, obviously, being a play-by-play broadcaster, you basically know the ins and outs of how the game is played and how the game maybe should be played in your eyes. So first off, something I honestly just kind of figured out over the past few weeks is what's happening in spring training, where defensive managers can end an inning and just kind of say, all right, that's it. I think the pitcher has to at least pitch 20 pitches, but basically if there's two outs and, the pitcher's going through a rough patch, even if the shortstop makes an error and someone gets on base after that, play, they can just end the inning. What do you think about that? And I know, I don't really know much about something like that, but, especially with spring training and, trying to just get people in baseball shape in such a short amount of time. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, spring training is spring training. Like, spring training is basically a glorified exhibition, and
Yep.
they make up the rules as they go along with those. So I'm not offended by that at all. And I'm a baseball traditionalist, don't get me wrong, but if you want to do something like that in spring training, like, I understand it. The game is just evolving that way, where everybody's focused on load management and pitch counts and things like that. So for me, if they want to do that in spring training, I don't think that's going to be the wave of the future for actual games. But yeah, spring training, you don't want a guy out there wearing it for 40 pitches. That's obviously having a tough time. Like, it's okay, I think, at that point to say, hey, this is an exhibition, and we're going to turn the page and just move on here. So I'm fine with that for spring training.
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree with you. I really hope that's not the future of the game going into regular season and playoff games. But I think, like you said, I think the point of spring training is literally, glorified exhibition and just getting baseball players in baseball shape to actually go into now 162 game season. Obviously, it was only 60 games last year. So I think that, whatever they can do to make sure that players are going to be in the best shape for the regular season is obviously priority. But let's talk about some rule changes that are actually going to be still in place for the regular season. I know one of the big controversies is having a runner start at second base for extra inning games. And as a traditionalist, I kind of know what your thoughts are going to be on this. And I kind of agree with you in terms of, I don't know, I'll let you start, but runner on second base for extra inning games during the regular season. Give us your take on that.
I don't really like it, and I'm it's funny. I was sure, if you'd asked me this when minor league baseball implemented it in the start of 2019, I was sure that I was always going to be in the majority of people that hated it. Now I feel like I'm in the minority. Like, I feel like there's some people that are starting to come around on it, and look, if you want to do it in the minor leagues, okay, I'll concede that, but major leagues, I just don't. It's not my cup of tea. I don't ever mind a game that is going into like the 19th inning, and to me there becomes a certain charm about it. There becomes a certain, it just becomes memorable in your mind. Like, I still remember Major League Baseball games that I've watched that have gone into like the 18th, 19th, 20th inning, and you're like, man, like, this is a classic. Like, this is such a battle. It's just again, sports are evolving and they're going in a different direction, but I hope that doesn't become permanent at the major league level. I could see, and maybe I could even concede, if a game gets to like the 14th inning, maybe then you start the runner at second base, just so you're not burning through arms. But, I cling to the traditions hard, and I'm just a traditionalist, and I don't like it.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's definitely also, games that go into the 16th inning, 19th inning, 1 a.m. where, 80% of the fans have left, but the 20% that are there are just passionate fans and they're not going to leave till the game is over. I think all of that just makes baseball as unique and amazing as it is. And yeah, I agree with you. Just having a runner at second base from the jump, as soon as you hop into the 10th inning, I just feel like is a little, I don't know. Again, like you said, I think it is kind of being in the minority because a lot of baseball fans are very prone for offense. They want runs, they want home runs, they want 12 to 12 games that are going to be a final score of 13 to 12 after 10 innings, and like basketball, football,
Fans don't want that though. Like
yeah,
baseball thinks that fans want that, and that's
yeah,
where baseball, like to me, that's where baseball has it wrong. That's where a lot of the leadership in baseball has it wrong. Is that they have this inferiority complex to the NFL and the NBA.
yeah,
Like no, most baseball fans love a pitcher's duel. You
yeah.
know, yeah, you might not get as many Twitter clips for a pitcher's duel as you would, for a home run derby, 8-6 ball game through 5, but who cares? Like the people that really appreciate baseball for what it is, they're not looking for that. So I hope they come to their senses with that.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point you bring up. So about like having a universal DH, there's expanded playoffs. They're not doing it this time around, but just as a concept, having a universal DH, I'm a huge Giants fan. Obviously, Madison Bumgarner, one of the best hitting pitchers in the game, and probably this whole decade. I love seeing pitchers hit. Seeing a pitcher hit a home run is one of the best things to see, in my opinion. So personally, I think having the uniqueness of having the DH in the American League and in the National League, letting the pitchers go up and try and hit a home run. I love that. So, what are your thoughts on universal DH?
I grew up with the DH as a Red Sox fan growing up. The American League was pretty much all I knew because when I was growing up, they didn't even have interleague play until I was well into my teens. So I like having both. I like the American League having the DH and the National League not. I think it's cool. I think no matter what your cup of tea is, you can get a different experience going from league to league. I don't think we need a universal DH. And to be honest, when I moved here, like it was the first time I was in a market that had a National League team and the Giants. So I had to really kind of relearn the game as far as the strategy, and the chess playing, if you will, with using the pitcher's spot. And it was really fascinating to me, and I really enjoyed it. I also like listening to an A's game and be like, oh yeah, like we don't have to deal with the pitcher swinging the bat. Like we get to see a dude that wants to get up there and basically just he's up there to mash. So I like having both, and I don't think there's a need to change it.
Yeah, definitely. So, what about expanded playoffs? I think for me, I think when it comes to baseball, just having I don't know. I feel like I can go either way. It just kind of depends on how Major League Baseball actually organizes it. I know they, had the best like 2 out of 3 series, which was I think a pretty interesting concept. Do you kind of like just having, like the 10 teams, having the wild, the 1 game wild card and then going straight into the divisional round? What do you think of expanded playoffs and kind of should it stay expanded or should it kind of go back to how it was?
I'm okay with the 1 game wild card.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. Expanding it beyond that in a traditional year, like, COVID year is different, obviously, but in a traditional year, no, like I don't really want it diluted. I don't want the teams diluted that are in the playoffs. Like I want there to be an incentive to win your division. And then I think it's cool to have those 1 game playoffs because you basically engage a bunch of other fan bases maybe for as long as a month or two toward the home stretch of the season where otherwise they wouldn't have any hope. So I'm for that. I just think that you got to be careful whenever you talk about expanding playoffs. Like you don't want to do it at the expense of, it's a team that dominates, wins a division in the regular season, and then some team gets in there that basically finished 500 and gets hot. You just have to be careful with that, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. So obviously you've kind of become almost this diehard A's fan and Red Sox fan. Let's start with the Red Sox though. What do you see the Red Sox kind of doing this year in terms, that division they're in with the Yankees and the Rays? Obviously, I think it's going to be a tough sled for them. But what do you think the Red Sox are going to do this year and maybe, in their next, 3-5 years? What do you think their future's like?
I have no idea. I have no idea. Like the Red Sox might as well be, Siberia right now. Like I'm so far removed because they don't have an organization here on the West Coast as far as a minor league organization. Like I could tell you, a little bit about the Seattle Mariners. I could probably tell you more about, the Mariners and the Rockies and teams that have affiliates on the West Coast because I see their minor league operations. But like the Red Sox haven't been out here since 2008 when they had to be in Lancaster for 2 years. So I really don't know what the future looks like for them. I was bummed that they basically gave Mookie Betts away to the Dodgers. I think that was a mistake. And, obviously they're having a bit of an identity crisis right now. So, good luck to them. I don't know what the future is going to hold. I just know they have a lot of goodwill to build back up with that fan base. I mean, I know the family of four going to Fenway, it costs you a pretty penny. And to say goodbye to a guy like Mookie Betts, who's worth the price of admission, that's a tough position to put yourself in. So, I think they obviously need to rebuild and they need to find another guy like a Mookie Betts, but that guy doesn't come along. They're not a dime a dozen. It's tough to find a guy like that. So I think they need to find another cornerstone player and for sure rebuild their farm system.
Awesome. Let's dive into the A's then. I know you can definitely probably you probably have a little more knowledge on that. Obviously the A's it's been a little bit tough sledding for them, especially obviously they're a great team, one of the best teams in baseball, honestly, and they get into the playoffs and whether it's them choking or it's just kind of hard for them to actually make a playoff run. I don't know if you have any thoughts, especially because you're in that minor league system in terms of the A's, short-term / long-term future, or maybe just kind of how the A's are going to be in the present this year. Give me your take on the Oakland A's this year.
The A's are like that battery that never dies, right? Like the A's just kind of have life. It seems like forever. They're always competitive every year. They're never going to be like the super team, like the Houston Astros that had all those superstars, or even the Dodgers that right now have all the superstars. I think the A's are there's like a sustainability about the A's and the way they do business and the way they groom players. A lot of times it's really hard and cutthroat, especially for fans, like to see certain players walk, like Marcus Semien, he walked, because it was a matter of dollars, I guess. But, the A's are always going to be that team that finds a way to stay competitive. And that's from talking to their farm director a while back, Keith Lippman, who was their longtime farm director. He goes, look, the genius of the A's is that we never threw in the towel like the Astros threw in the towel for all those years and basically collected those, number one overall picks. Like the A's are never going to do that. So, I think the A's they'll be sustainable. I think they're very much in limbo as far as the new ballpark goes. I think if they get a new ballpark, that changes the dynamic of how they do business. But until then, I think they still see themselves as a team that is not going to have people spending money at the gate to get into the Coliseum. So they're going to have to find other ways to go about winning and sustaining. And I think we'll find out a lot about what the long-term holds for the A's in the next couple of years when the ballpark situation gets resolved, hopefully.
Yeah, I think that's something we love to see, though. We definitely, as sports fans, I think most of us don't really like to see teams tank for number 1 through 5 picks. And as a Giants fan, I'm pretty sure we're going to have a rough few years. But watching them last year in that 60-game season, they were really competitive. And
I think they'll be okay. I don't think there's going to be a rough few years. I think they'll be okay. I think Farhan has a plan, and they have guys in their system. I think they'll be okay. But you just, I think Giants fans got spoiled for a while. I mean, and they got lucky. They won three World Series. So I think, that factors into it as well. Like the expectations maybe have to be tempered a little bit.
No, that's the thing. Like, I'm good. 3 World Series, that's incredible. So I'm perfectly fine with, not making the playoffs for a couple years. I was touching on it's really nice to just see your team be competitive, whether you're winning or losing games. And that's kind of what the Giants did last year. And gosh, I don't know if you watched those A's Giants games last year where the Giants had these humongous leads going into the 9th inning and the A's took every single one. That was incredible, man.
Pretty wild.
It's heartbreaking, but it's fun. Yeah.
Sorry about it.
It's good. Again, I have nothing against the A's. I actually think that, honestly, I'd probably take the A's as my second favorite team. I don't have much rivalry there. I'm with the Dodgers. can't stand them. But
Cool.
yeah, I think the A's and the Giants, whether they're, going to make a playoff push or whether they're just, going to, kind of stay competitive. I think it's still going to be fun as a fan, as a Giants fan or an A's fan. I think it'll be fun to watch them this year.
Oh, for sure. It's going to be baseball. It's going to be fun no matter what.
Yeah, I kind of just wanted to hop into the NL West battle. Obviously, the Padres and the Dodgers are absolutely loaded. I was actually, I have a few friends that are Dodger fans, and when Trevor Bauer signed with the Dodgers, I was just telling them, look, and it's not completely true. It's just me being a little biased Giants fan, but I was basically just telling them, like, look, on paper, you guys by far have the best team in baseball. If you don't win 3 World Series in the next, 6 years, then that's going to be pretty disappointing. And I know baseball is completely different. It's a lot harder to actually win a bunch of World Series in a short amount of time. But I don't know. I think that Dodgers team is by far, on paper, probably the best team in baseball. And I think as a Dodgers fan, I was just telling them, like, look, you guys aren't going to have much to listen to or watch until they actually make it to the playoffs, because you already know they're going to be the team to beat. And so, well, what do you think of that NL West battle, though, with the Dodgers and Padres having loaded lineups and pitching rotations?
I'll tell you this: the scary thing about the Dodgers is that they got all their pieces at the big league level without giving up their elite minor league prospects. So they are fully loaded at the minor league level too. So they've built the right way. I think they've used their resource the right way without compromising their long-term plan with the minor leaguers and those chips. The Padres have had to do things a little bit differently. They have they've had to spend a little money. They've had to trade some of their blue chip prospects, but I think the Padres kind of had this awareness that, hey, if we don't do this, we're basically screwed, because the Dodgers are here and they're here to stay. So AJ Preller's had to be aggressive in the free agent market. And it's going to be really fascinating to see what happens down in Southern California. I like that Padres team. I like the makeup of it.
Yeah.
I can tell you they do have some guys at the top level minor leagues that are impact type players. So, I think the Dodgers are a little bit deeper as far as the farm system, but Padres are going to be right there with them in terms of excitement.
Yeah, definitely, and I'm looking forward to it. Just as a Giants fan as well, I really do hope the Padres can kind of make some damage in terms of being maybe possibly the top threat in the entire National League to the Dodgers. And I think that's a high, it's a good possibility. So with being with the Reno Aces, how, we kind of touched on the Diamondbacks a little bit maybe. So do you see yourself becoming a Diamondbacks fan of any sort, over the next few years? Do you think you're going to be a triple threat fan, Red Sox, A's, and Diamondbacks?
Fan is a relative term for me and for, especially my colleagues these days. If you start getting into this and years into this, I think you root for people. Obviously you pull for your organization, because you get to know people in the organization and get to like them, hopefully, and see the big vision that they have. And obviously you're there every day as it's being executed. But I'll always root for, I think now I'll always root for people first. And if I'm lucky enough to get hired by whatever team, obviously you root for that team. I mean, you're tied to their brand and their success. So yeah, I guess in a way I will be. I guess I'll just say I'm emotionally invested in a few different teams now, including the Diamondbacks.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's something I've kind of realized about myself over the past few months. I'm not quite sure if you play fantasy sports at all, like fantasy football, basketball, or baseball. No.
I can't because of the thing I signed with Pacific.
Gotcha.
They don't let you do that.
Gotcha.
So I can't. I mean, I could follow along my friends do, but I can't.
Yeah. So I think for me, this is kind of the point I was touching on is over the last few months, I love fantasy sports, and I've actually been able to kind of realize, like, wow, I'm literally rooting for like separate players on these separate teams. And I think that's really cool, just in terms of, if you are going to break into the sports industry, you probably are going to start, like you said, rooting for people and being fans of separate players and their journeys. And, obviously you end up being tied to your organizations. Like, I'm a diehard Kings fan and I'm a diehard Giants fan, but, with football, like, I got really into fantasy football this year, and I started kind of rooting for separate players on separate teams. And I think that might be something I start doing is, not only rooting for a team, but kind of rooting for players around the league. So it's a
And
good
you
point.
can, I mean, don't get me wrong, like root for your team. I think that's
Yeah,
where it all stems. Like if I didn't root for the Red Sox as hard as I did when I was growing up and even in college, like I wouldn't be doing this now. So I think that's an important element to have as you kind of journey into this.
Yeah. Before we wrap this whole episode up, just kind of want to get some predictions out of you for the baseball season. We can dive into a World Series prediction as well, but who's a team that you see kind of maybe an underdog team or a team that isn't, obviously you can say the A's, but, just going around Major League Baseball, do you have a team that's going to kind of upset, in terms of beat the expectations that they have and, maybe make a playoff push and, has a lot of young talent that you see kind of making a playoff push that people don't really have doing that this year?
I mean, is anyone talking about the Rays? I feel like I feel like the Rays are in there every year and still no one talks about them. Like if I were putting a futures bet in Vegas on a team to win the World Series, I bet you get great odds with the Rays, and I would take that. Like that would be a great bet to make because nobody talks about them. They're in a crappy market as far as they're down in South Florida at a lousy stadium. I've been there; it sucks. But they ball out. Like they always have dudes, and I think they embrace kind of being that forgotten about team. So I'd throw the Rays in there perennially every year. I'm trying to give you a West Coast team. I know the Mariners have a lot of electric talent coming up. Like Kyle Lewis is going to be sensational. The Angels have Joe Adell coming up. He's going to be sensational. I don't know if those teams have enough around them, especially in the pitching department, to be kind of a dark horse World Series type team. And maybe the A's still do. I think the A's might surprise some people if they can, hopefully pull everything together and maybe find a couple of pieces that they lost. I mean, obviously the losing Simeon hurts. Losing a couple of arms hurts, but I never count the A's out. They always seem to find players that can patch them through.
Yeah, you kind of touched on it with the Mariners and the Angels, but is there any players that are either, gonna, you think, break into the majors this year or have been just absolutely tearing it up in the minor leagues, maybe on the West Coast that you've kind of observed over the last couple of years that you kind of see breaking out this year in the majors?
Is this with the A's or just in general?
Or maybe both, just in general, just from your observation, just watching, the ports and, obviously being involved with the Reno Aces, just anybody you've seen.
With the A's, certainly Jesus Luzardo. I know he's already kind of gotten there a little bit, but I would look to him to be kind of ace of the staff type of material going forward. And then I'd go back to those two other guys that I mentioned, Kyle Lewis and Joe Adell with the Mariners and the Angels. Those are going to be two pretty special players coming up here on the West Coast to keep an eye out for. It's funny, like I feel so far removed from baseball. I wish I could actually give you a more in-depth answer to the question, but I feel so far, like it's been a long time since I've called a minor league baseball game and actually seen these guys at a professional level. I mean, last year, I think Joe Adell got up some big league games in Anaheim, and obviously Kyle Lewis did. He had an incredible catch on a foggy night in Seattle last year. But I think those are going to be two players that you're going to hear a lot from in the years to come.
Yeah, it's really interesting because over the past few months, I've been so into football and basketball. And honestly, baseball was always like my sport. Like I was a huge Giants fan. I was usually into baseball more than the other two, but I think obviously I'm not a play-by-play broadcaster or anything, but I think being removed from baseball for so long, this interview in itself has really just gotten me so excited for the baseball season to start. And yeah, I'm just, we're about a month and a half away from opening day. And so it's going to be really exciting just to especially get a whole 162 game season. Obviously we don't really know how that's going to work out. Hopefully. Exactly. Yeah. Last year was 60 games and that was so different. And, obviously with the 162 game season, that kind of changes a lot of the dynamics of things and whether teams can actually, have a good second half of the season. And so it's going to be really fun and I'm really excited for it. Before we wrap this up, give me your World Series prediction coming out of the National League and the American League, and give me a pick.
Wow. This is like literally throwing darts at a board.
Yeah, throw the darts at the board, man. I don't expect you to give me, sports bettors don't have to listen to you. This is just for fun. I'll give you my pick too.
I'm going to say that the Dodgers are going to come out of the NL. It's just so tough for me to discount the firepower there. The American League is going to be very, very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, God, I hate picking the Yankees. So I'm going to pick the Rays. I'll go with a rematch.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I like that. I actually my very first episode was with a baseball player, and we kind of made some World Series picks, and I had the Dodgers coming out of the National League too. Like you said, on paper and actually playing on the field, and the way they're just orchestrated, it just doesn't seem like you have to pick them. It would be weird to not pick them unless you're trying to make a hot take.
Sure.
Yeah, Dodgers out of the National League, and I actually do have the Yankees coming out of the American League for me. And I know as a Red Sox fan that hurts you, and
that's okay.
I think
they're talented. They are talented. So I would not put it past them. I don't have it in my blood to pick them. So
yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, I think especially that Dodgers Yankees matchup. I think that's been a World Series that everybody's kind of been waiting for a long time, especially. The Yankees have just come up short a few times over the past few years, and obviously the Dodgers have been one of the best teams in baseball for the past 10 years. And so that's kind of been a marquee matchup that a lot of, MLB analysts and experts have been predicting at the start of the year.
MLB would love it. They would love that World Series.
Exactly, yeah. It would make them a lot of money for sure. A lot of stars on both teams, and so that's my pick. And I like your pick too. And I think a Dodgers Rays rematch would be great, especially if the Rays came out on top. I'd love to see that.
Yeah, I'd love to see that too.
Cool. So that kind of wraps up our episode. Again, Zach, thank you so much for joining. I honestly just absolutely love the conversation we had, and I love the energy that you bring, and it kind of helps me keep my energy throughout the episode too. And so just some incredible conversation about you and about your journey, and especially some MLB talk. It was just great to kind of get your kind of insider analysis on some of these younger guys that hopefully are going to break out in the majors, because I know you have a lot more information on that than I do, just because I've always kind of focused on the major leagues, and not until recently have I actually kind of went under the tunnel and kind of tried to pick out some of these minor leaguers. So I really appreciate your insight on some of that, and again, thank you for hopping on. I really appreciate it.
Austin, you got it, man. And hey, best of luck moving forward. Always, of course, you can use me as a resource whenever you need, but just never lose your passion, never lose your drive, and always be yourself, no matter what. I think that's the best thing I can tell you, is just be yourself and never be afraid to evolve.
Awesome. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Everybody, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Austino Sports Talk. Again, one episode per week. Stay tuned on Instagram at Austino Sports Talk. I'm also on Twitter at Austino Sports. And also look up Zack Bayrouty on Twitter. He has an awesome Twitter account with some great feed about what he's been up to and what he's continuing to do, especially with UOP men's basketball right now. He's still doing a lot of sports stuff in sort of an era where you would think that it would be a little hard, but not for him. So again, thank you for listening, and have a great day, everybody. Peace out.